The prison ship moved through the darkness of space like a metal monster. Inside its cold walls, creatures from 100 different worlds sat in small cells. They were all waiting for their punishment. The Velthari Empire did not show mercy to anyone who broke their laws. Commander Zorath walked through the main corridor of the ship. His skin was blue and covered with small scales. His eyes were completely black, and they showed no emotion at all. He had been serving the Empire for 300 years, and he had seen every type of prisoner. But today was different. Today they had captured something new, a human. Zorath stopped in front of cell number 47. Inside, a young human male sat on the floor. His name was Marcus Cole, and he was only 28 years old. His clothes were torn, and there was dried blood on his face. But his eyes were still bright. They were still full of life and something else that Zorath could not understand. "So this is what a human looks like," Zorath said, his voice cold and empty. "I expected something more impressive." Marcus looked up at the alien commander. He did not show any fear. "Sorry to disappoint you. We don't all look like heroes from the stories." Zorath made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You speak our language well for a primitive species." "I had a good teacher," Marcus replied, "before your soldiers killed her." The commander did not care about dead translators. He had more important matters to discuss. "Do you know why you are here, human?" Marcus shrugged his shoulders. "Because I destroyed your mining station on Kepler 9. Because I freed the slaves you kept there. Because I killed 17 of your soldiers." He paused and smiled a little. "Should I continue?" Zorath's black eyes narrowed. "You killed more than 17. The final count was 34. I lost count after a while," Marcus admitted. "Things got busy." The commander stepped closer to the energy barrier that kept Marcus inside his cell. "The High Council has decided your punishment. Tomorrow, at sunrise on the planet Vorth, you will be executed by the sacred flames." Marcus raised one eyebrow. "Fire? That's your big punishment?" "You do not understand," Zorath said. "The flames of Vorth are not ordinary fire. They burn at temperatures that can melt the strongest metals in the galaxy. They were created by our ancient priests thousands of years ago. No creature has ever survived them." "Not one." Marcus thought about this for a moment. Then he simply said, "There's always a first time." Zorath stared at the human for a long time. Then he turned and walked away. Behind him, he could hear Marcus humming a strange tune. The sound followed him down the corridor like an unwanted shadow. The planet Vorth was beautiful in a terrible way. Its surface was covered with black rocks and rivers of liquid fire. The sky was orange and red, filled with ash that fell like snow. In the center of the main continent stood the Temple of Flames. It was an ancient building made of stone that could resist any heat. Thousands of Velthari gathered there to watch executions. It was their favorite form of entertainment. Marcus was brought to the temple in chains. His hands were bound behind his back, and a metal collar was locked around his neck. Guards walked on both sides of him, their weapons ready. They expected him to try to escape. But Marcus walked calmly, looking around at everything with curious eyes. The crowd of Velthari made sounds of hatred when they saw him. They threw small stones and pieces of food. One of them hit Marcus on the cheek, but he did not react. He just kept walking. The Temple of Flames was enormous inside. The ceiling was so high that Marcus could barely see it through the smoke. In the center of the building was a pit that went down into the planet itself. From this pit, flames rose up constantly. They were not orange or red like normal fire. They were white and blue, so bright that it hurt to look at them. High Priest Morath stood beside the pit. He was very old, even for a Velthari. His scales had turned gray and his body was bent with age, but his voice was still strong when he spoke. "Bring the human forward." The guards pushed Marcus toward the edge of the pit. The heat was incredible. Marcus could feel his skin starting to burn even from several feet away. Sweat poured down his face, and his lungs felt like they were on fire every time he breathed. But he did not cry out. He did not beg for mercy. High Priest Morath raised his arms, and the crowd became silent. People of the Velthari Empire, today we execute a criminal of the worst kind. This human destroyed our property, freed our slaves, and murdered our soldiers. For these crimes, he will be given to the sacred flames. The crowd cheered. The sound was like thunder inside the temple. Morath turned to look at Marcus. "Do you have any final words, human?" Marcus took a deep breath. The air was so hot that it burned his throat. But when he spoke, his voice was steady. "I have a question, actually." The high priest looked surprised. "A question? At the moment of your death?" "Why fire?" Marcus asked. "Of all the ways you could kill someone, why did your people choose fire?" Morath made a gesture of confusion. "Because fire is pure. Fire destroys everything. Fire shows no mercy and plays no favorites. It is the perfect instrument of justice." Marcus nodded slowly. "That's interesting, because where I come from, fire is something very different." "What do you mean?" Morath demanded. Marcus looked at the flames rising from the pit. They were beautiful in their violence, wild and uncontrollable. He thought about Earth, about his ancestors sitting around campfires millions of years ago. He thought about how they had learned to control fire, to use it, to make it their friend. "On my world," Marcus said, "fire was the first thing we ever truly mastered. Other animals ran from it. They feared it. But humans, we took fire into our caves. We fed it and protected it. We made it ours." Morath laughed at this. "Foolish words from a doomed creature. No species can own fire. Fire is chaos itself." Marcus smiled. "Then you don't know humans very well." Two guards grabbed Marcus and lifted him off the ground. They carried him toward the pit, ready to throw him into the white flames below. The crowd was screaming with excitement. This was the moment they had been waiting for. "Wait!" Morath commanded. The guards stopped at the very edge of the pit. "I want to see his face when he burns. Remove the collar." One of the guards unlocked the metal collar from Marcus's neck. For a moment, Marcus stood completely free at the edge of the pit. The flames were inches away from him now. The heat was beyond anything he had ever felt. Then something strange happened. The flames began to move in a way that was not natural. They started to reach up from the pit like hands stretching toward Marcus. But instead of burning him, they seemed to curl around him gently. The white fire touched his skin and did nothing. It did not hurt him at all. Marcus looked down at the flames with wonder in his eyes. He slowly extended his hand toward the fire, and the flames wrapped around his fingers like a pet greeting its owner. "What is this?" Morath screamed. "What trick is this?" But it was not a trick. Something ancient was happening, something that the Velthari had never seen before. The sacred flames were not attacking the human. They were welcoming him. Marcus stepped forward into the pit. The crowd gasped in horror. They expected to see him consumed, reduced to ash in an instant. But Marcus did not burn. He stood in the middle of the flames like he was standing in a warm bath. The fire danced around him, through him, but it caused him no harm. Marcus raised his eyes and looked directly at High Priest Morath. The flames reflected in his pupils, making them glow like two small suns. "You call fire chaos," Marcus said, and his voice echoed through the entire temple. "But fire was never chaos to us. Fire was our first friend, our first tool, our first light in the darkness." The flames grew higher around him. They started to change color, shifting from white to orange to a deep, powerful red. The heat in the temple increased dramatically. Velthari and the crowd started to back away in fear. "We are the children of fire," Marcus continued. "We were born from it. We grew strong beside it. And no matter how advanced your empire becomes, You will never understand what we share with the flames." Morath fell backward, terror on his ancient face. "This is impossible. The sacred flames answer to no one." Marcus walked forward through the fire. Each step he took left burning footprints on the stone floor. The flames followed him like loyal dogs following their master. He stepped out of the pit and onto the temple floor, surrounded by a corona of fire that did not touch him. "The fire does not answer to no one," Marcus said. "It answers to those who respect it, those who know it, those who have earned its trust over 1,000,000 years of partnership." The guards tried to stop him. They raised their weapons and fired energy beams at the human. But the fire moved faster than thought. It rose up like a shield, absorbing every attack. Then it struck back, and the guards were knocked aside like toys. Chaos erupted in the Temple of Flames. Velthari ran in every direction, screaming and pushing each other. Marcus walked through them calmly, protected by his cloak of fire. He was looking for something specific, someone specific. He found Commander Zorath trying to escape through a side door. "Going somewhere?" Marcus asked. Zorath turned around, his black eyes wide with fear. "What are you? What kind of monster are you?" Marcus thought about the question for a moment. "I'm not a monster. I'm just a human. And you made a terrible mistake when you decided to use fire against me." The flames around Marcus grew brighter. They pressed toward Zorath, forcing him back against the wall. The commander could feel his scales starting to crack from the heat. "Please," Zorath begged. "Please, I was just following orders. I did not choose this." "Neither did the slaves on Kepler 9, Marcus replied. "Neither did my friends who died because of your empire." He raised his hand, and the fire responded. It grew into a massive wave of flame that filled the entire doorway. Zorath closed his eyes and prepared for death. But death did not come. When Zorath opened his eyes, the fire was gone. Marcus was standing in front of him, no longer surrounded by flames. He looked like an ordinary human again, tired, wounded, and covered in ash. "I am not going to kill you," Marcus said. "I want you to live. I want you to go back to your High Council and tell them what happened here today. Tell them what you saw. Tell them that humans are not to be burned." Zorath could not speak. He could only nod. Marcus turned away and walked out of the temple. Behind him, the sacred flames finally calmed down. They returned to their pit, burning normally again. But everyone who had witnessed what happened knew that things would never be the same. The human had walked through fire and survived. No, more than that. The fire had chosen him, and somewhere in the darkness of space, word began to spread. The Velthari Empire had made an enemy that could not be killed by their most powerful weapon. An enemy that the flames themselves had decided to protect. The war was about to begin. 3 months had passed since the incident at the Temple of Flames. In that time, Marcus Cole had become the most wanted man in the galaxy. The Velthari Empire had placed a reward on his head that was larger than the annual budget of most planets. Bounty hunters from every corner of known space were searching for him. But Marcus was not hiding. He was building something. The planet Nexus 7 was located in the uncharted regions of space. It was a small world, mostly covered in forests and mountains. The Velthari Empire had never bothered to conquer it because it had no valuable resources. This made it perfect for Marcus and his growing army. They called themselves the Ember Collective. Marcus stood on a cliff overlooking the main camp. Below him, thousands of beings from dozens of different species were training, building, and preparing for battle. They were escaped slaves, refugees, and rebels who had heard the stories about the human who could control fire. They had traveled across the galaxy to join him. "You look worried," a voice said behind him. Marcus turned to see Kira approaching. She was a Noxian, a species known for their silver skin and 4 arms. She had been one of the slaves Marcus freed from Kepler 9, and now she was his second in command. "I am always worried," Marcus admitted. "The Empire is not going to let us grow forever. Sooner or later, they will find this place." Kira stood beside him and looked down at the camp. "Then we better be ready when they do." Marcus nodded slowly. The truth was, he still did not fully understand what had happened to him in the Temple of Flames. The fire had accepted him. It had protected him. But he did not know why or how. He only knew that the connection was still there. He could feel it like a warmth inside his chest, waiting to be called upon. "There is something else bothering you," Kira observed. Her species was very good at reading emotions. "Something deeper." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "When I was in that temple, when the flames surrounded me, I felt something. It was not just heat. It was like the fire was alive, like it was trying to communicate with me." "What did it say?" "That is the problem. I do not know. It was too big, too complex for me to understand. It was like trying to read a book written in a language you have never seen before." Kira thought about this carefully. "Perhaps you need to learn the language." Before Marcus could respond, an alarm began to sound throughout the camp. Red lights flashed and people started running toward defensive positions. Marcus and Kira immediately ran down the cliff toward the command center. The command center was a large building made from the metal of old starships. Inside, dozens of screens showed different views of the space around Nexus 7. On the largest screen, a massive fleet of Velthari warships was approaching the planet. "How many?" Marcus asked. One of the operators, a small creature with green fur, looked at his instruments. 47 capital ships, over 200 support vessels. And, sir, they have brought something else." The screen changed to show a new image. It was a ship unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. It was shaped like a giant sphere, and its surface was covered with strange symbols that glowed with blue light. "What is that?" "According to our records, it is called the Frozen Heart. It is the most advanced weapon in the Velthari arsenal. It can project absolute zero temperatures across an entire planet. Nothing survives when it fires." The room became very quiet. Everyone understood what this meant. The Velthari had learned from their mistake at the temple. They were not going to use fire against Marcus this time. They were going to use the opposite. "They want to freeze us," Marcus said softly. Kira grabbed his arm. "We need to evacuate." "We cannot fight that thing." "There is no time," another operator reported. "The fleet is moving too fast. They will be in firing range within 20 minutes. Marcus closed his eyes and tried to think. His mind raced through every option, every possibility. But there was no escape. The Velthari had planned this perfectly. They had brought enough ships to surround the entire planet, and a weapon that was specifically designed to counter his only advantage. Then he felt it. The warmth in his chest grew stronger. The fire inside him was waking up, responding to his fear and his need. And with it came something else. A memory that was not his own. He saw images of ancient times. He saw stars being born in explosions of light and heat. He saw planets forming from clouds of fire and gas. He saw the beginning of everything, when the universe itself was nothing but flame. And he understood. Fire was not just a chemical reaction. Fire was energy. Fire was transformation. Fire was one of the fundamental forces that had created everything in existence, and cold was simply the absence of that energy. Marcus opened his eyes. "Get everyone to the ships. Start evacuating immediately." "What about you?" Kira asked. "I am going to give you time." He did not wait for her to argue. He ran out of the command center and headed toward the highest point on the planet. It was a mountain called the Spire, and its peak reached far above the clouds. As Marcus climbed, he could feel the fire inside him growing stronger and stronger. The Velthari fleet was getting closer. Marcus could see it now with his own eyes. The ships looked like insects blocking out the stars. And in the center of the formation, the frozen heart began to glow with cold blue light. Marcus reached the top of the spire just as the weapon started to charge. The temperature around him began to drop rapidly. His breath became visible in the air. Ice started to form on the rocks beneath his feet. He closed his eyes and reached inside himself for the flame. It came to him like an old friend. It filled his body with warmth and power. But this time, Marcus did not simply call the fire. He became the fire. His consciousness expanded outward, touching every flame on the planet. Every campfire, every spark, every source of heat answered his call. And then he reached further. He reached past the planet into space itself. He reached toward the stars, those ancient furnaces of nuclear flame that had been burning since the beginning of time. He felt their power, their age, their endless hunger. The nearest star to Nexus 7 was called Solvan. It was a yellow star, similar to the sun that warmed Earth. Marcus reached out to it with his mind, and for a moment, he felt the star's consciousness touch his own. It was vast, beyond imagination. It was older than any civilization in the galaxy. And it recognized him. It knew what he was trying to do. "Help me," Marcus whispered. The star responded. A beam of pure solar energy shot out from Solvan toward Nexus 7. It was not a natural solar flare. It was something targeted, something controlled. The beam passed by the planet and struck the frozen heart directly. The Velthari weapon exploded in a burst of light that was visible across the entire sector. The sphere shattered into a billion pieces, and a wave of energy spread outward, damaging dozens of ships in the fleet. But Marcus was not finished. He directed the fire within him toward the Velthari formation. Flames appeared in space itself, burning without oxygen, fed by pure energy rather than chemistry. The fire spread through the fleet like a disease. Ships exploded one after another. Escape pods launched in every direction as crews abandoned their vessels. Commander Zorath stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the destruction with disbelief. "This is impossible," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "He is one human. How can one human do this?" His communications officer looked at him with terror in his eyes. "Sir, we are receiving reports from across the fleet. The fire is not responding to any of our countermeasures. It is as if it has a mind of its own." Zorath remembered what Marcus had said in the temple. Fire was never chaos to us. Fire was our first friend. Now he finally understood what those words meant. "Retreat," Zorath commanded. "Order all surviving ships to retreat immediately." "But sir, the High Council ordered us to destroy the planet at any cost." "The High Council is not here," Zorath shouted. "They did not see what I saw on Vorth. They do not understand what we are dealing with. This human is not just a rebel. He is something ancient, something connected to forces we cannot comprehend." The flagship turned and accelerated away from Nexus 7. The remaining Velthari ships followed, leaving behind the burning wreckage of their weapons and their pride. On the spire, Marcus collapsed. The effort of channeling so much energy had nearly killed him. His body was covered in burns, and he could barely breathe. But he was smiling, because down below, he could see evacuation ships rising into the sky. His people had escaped. Kira found him an hour later, lying unconscious on the cold stone of the mountain peak. She carried him down to a medical ship and stayed beside him as the doctors worked to save his life. For 3 days, Marcus did not wake up. The doctors said his body was recovering from something they had never seen before. His cells were regenerating at an impossible rate, as if he was being rebuilt from the inside. When he finally opened his eyes, Kira was there. "You are an idiot," she said, but there were tears in her eyes. Marcus tried to laugh, but it hurt too much. "Did everyone make it?" "Most of them. We lost about 200 in the attack, but thousands more survived because of what you did." Marcus closed his eyes again. 200 lives, 200 people who had trusted him, who had believed in him, who were now dead. The weight of their loss pressed down on him like a physical force. "This is not over," he said quietly. "The Empire will come back. They will find new weapons, new strategies." "And we will be ready for them," Kira replied. "You showed the entire galaxy something today, Marcus. You showed them that the Velthari can be beaten. You showed them that one person can make a difference. It was not just me. The star helped. The fire helped. I am just a connection. A bridge between humans and something much older." Kira placed her hand on his. "Then maybe that is what you were always meant to be. A bridge between fire and flesh. Between the ancient universe and the beings who live in it now." Marcus thought about this for a long time. Somewhere in his chest, the warmth still burned. It was smaller now, tired like he was, but it was still there. And he knew that when he needed it again, it would answer. Because fire and humanity had been friends since the beginning. And friends do not abandon each other. On the Velthari homeworld, news of the defeat at Nexus 7 spread quickly. The people were shocked. Their empire had never lost a battle so completely, and they had lost it to a single human. The High Council met in emergency session. They argued for hours about what to do. Some wanted to build even more powerful weapons. Some wanted to negotiate with the rebels, and some whispered that perhaps the humans were not as primitive as they had always believed. High Priest Morath, who had survived the incident at the temple, stood before the council with a new message. "We have made a terrible mistake," he said. "For thousands of years, we believed that we had mastered fire. We built temples to it. We used it to execute our enemies, but we never truly understood it." "What are you saying?" the council leader demanded. Morath's old eyes were full of fear and wonder. "I am saying that fire is not a weapon to be used. Fire is a living force, and it has chosen its champion. It has chosen the humans, and unless we find a way to make peace with them, it will burn our entire empire to ash." The council did not want to hear this. They rejected Morath's words and ordered him to leave. But as he walked out of the chamber, he knew that his warning would come true. The humans were not just fighters. They were something much more dangerous. They were the children of fire. And fire always wins in the end. 2 years of war had changed everything. The Velthari Empire, which had ruled 1,000 star systems for 10,000 years, was crumbling. Planet after planet had joined the Ember Collective. Species that had been slaves for generations were now fighting beside Marcus Cole against their former masters. The human had become a legend. Stories about him spread from one end of the galaxy to the other. Some said he could walk through the heart of a sun and emerge unharmed. Others claimed he could speak to the flames themselves and command them like a general commands soldiers. The truth was somewhere between these tales, but even the truth was extraordinary enough. Marcus stood on the bridge of the flagship Phoenix Rising. It was a massive vessel built from the combined technology of 50 different species who had joined the rebellion. Around it floated a fleet of 3,000 ships, the largest force ever assembled against the Velthari Empire. Today was the final day. Today they would attack the Velthari homeworld. "All ships are in position," Kira reported from her station. She had grown stronger in these 2 years. She was no longer just a freed slave. She was a warrior, a leader, and the person Marcus trusted most in the universe. "Any word from the surface?" Marcus asked. "The resistance cells confirm they are ready. When we begin our attack, they will disable the planetary defense grid from inside." Marcus nodded slowly. Inside him, the fire burned brighter than ever. Over the past 2 years, he had learned to understand it better. He had meditated for countless hours, exploring the connection between himself and the ancient force that had chosen him. And he had discovered something amazing. Fire was not just destruction. Fire was life. Every star in the universe was a fire, and stars created the elements that made life possible. Carbon, oxygen, iron, all the building blocks of existence were forged in the hearts of dying stars. Without fire, there would be nothing. No planets, no creatures, no civilizations. This knowledge had changed how Marcus used his power. He no longer simply commanded the flames. He worked with them, cooperated with them, and in return, they gave him abilities that seemed impossible. "There is one more thing," Kira said, her voice careful. "A ship just arrived at the edge of the system. It is flying the white flag of negotiation. They want to talk." Marcus felt surprise wash through him. "Who is it?" "Commander Zorath. He is asking for a personal meeting." The name brought back memories of a prison cell and a cold voice telling him about sacred flames. Zorath had been there at the beginning of everything, and now he wanted to talk. "Tell him I will meet him on neutral ground, the moon Solaris. 1 hour." Kira looked worried. "Marcus, this could be a trap." "I know, but if there is any chance of ending this without more death, I have to take it." The moon Solaris was a dead world with no atmosphere. Marcus landed his shuttle on its gray surface and walked toward the meeting point. He was wearing a special suit that allowed him to survive in the vacuum, but he barely needed it. The fire inside him kept him warm even in the absolute cold of space. Zorath was already waiting. The Velthari commander looked much older than Marcus remembered. His scales had lost their shine, and his body seemed bent with exhaustion. The war had taken everything from him. "Thank you for coming," Zorath said through his suit's communicator. "Thank you for asking," Marcus replied. "What do you want?" Zorath was silent for a moment, looking up at the stars. "Do you know how old our empire is, human? 10,000 years. For 10,000 years, we have conquered and ruled. We believed we were the greatest species in the galaxy. We believed nothing could challenge us. And then you met humans. No. And then we tried to burn one human, and the fire refused to obey us." Zorath finally looked at Marcus directly. "That moment changed everything. It made us question everything we believed about the universe." Marcus waited for him to continue. "After your attack on Nexus 7, I spent many months studying your species. I learned about your history, your culture, your relationship with fire. Do you know what I discovered? Tell me." "Humans have been using fire for nearly 2 million years. No other known species has mastered fire for more than a few thousand years before advancing to other energy sources. But your kind kept fire close. You built rituals around it. You told stories about it. You made it sacred in ways that no other species ever has." Marcus nodded slowly. "Fire was our first tool, our first weapon, our first comfort in the darkness. It is part of who we are." "Yes," Zorath agreed. "And that is why the flames chose you. Not because humans are stronger or smarter than other species, but because you have loved fire longer and more deeply than anyone else in the galaxy." This was not new information to Marcus, but hearing it from a Velthari commander felt significant. "Why are you telling me this? Why ask for this meeting?" Zorath reached up and removed his helmet. The vacuum of space immediately began affecting him. His skin started to freeze, and his eyes began to cloud over, but he kept talking, his words becoming harder to understand. "Because I want you to know that some of us understand now. Some of us see the truth, and I want to ask you for mercy." Marcus quickly moved forward and placed his hand on Zorath's face. The fire inside him responded, creating a bubble of warmth and air around the Velthari commander. Zorath gasped and began breathing again. "Why did you do that?" Marcus demanded. "You could have died." Zorath looked at him with something like wonder. "That is exactly why. I wanted to see if you would save me. I wanted to know if the stories about you are true." What stories? That you are not just a warrior, that you are also a healer, that the fire you control does not only destroy, but also protects. Zorath's voice was shaking now. The High Council plans to use the Genesis device today. If your fleet attacks, they will activate it. Marcus felt cold, despite the fire burning inside him. What is the Genesis device? It is a weapon that will ignite the atmosphere of every planet in the sector. Billions will die. Not just our people. Everyone. The Council believes it is better to destroy everything than to lose the Empire. That is madness. Yes, it is. And that is why I came to warn you. Because despite everything, I do not want to be part of genocide. Marcus looked at the Velthari commander for a long moment. This creature had been his enemy, had tried to execute him, had hunted him across the galaxy. But now he was risking his life to prevent something terrible. Where is the device? Marcus asked. In the Imperial Palace, deep underground. It is protected by barriers that no weapon can penetrate. Can it be disabled? Only by the Emperor himself. The activation requires his biological signature. Marcus thought quickly. The Emperor was the supreme ruler of the Velthari. He was also the most protected individual in the entire Empire. Getting to him would be nearly impossible, unless someone walked through fire to reach him. Return to your fleet, Marcus said. Tell your commanders to stand down. Tell them that if they allow my ships to pass, I will try to end this without destroying your homeworld. Zorath looked confused. You would show us mercy after everything we have done? Mercy is not weakness, Marcus replied. It is strength. The strongest thing anyone can do is choose not to destroy when they have the power to destroy. He helped Zorath back to his shuttle and watched him fly away. Then he returned to his own ship and contacted Kira. Change of plans. The fleet stays here. I am going to the surface alone. Kira's voice was sharp with concern. Marcus, that is suicide. The Imperial Palace has defenses that would stop an army. Then it is good that I am not an army. I am something else. He did not give her time to argue. He pushed his shuttle toward the Velthari homeworld at maximum speed. Around him, the stars seemed to glow brighter, as if they knew what he was about to attempt. The Velthari homeworld was called Veltar Prime. It was a beautiful planet with blue oceans and green continents. From space, it looked peaceful. But Marcus knew that underneath that peaceful surface, billions of people lived in fear of an empire that had ruled them with cruelty for thousands of years. His shuttle was attacked the moment it entered the atmosphere. Defense batteries fired at him from every direction. Missiles streaked toward him like angry insects. But Marcus did not try to dodge. He simply let the fire inside him expand outward. The flames created a shield around his shuttle. Missiles exploded against it without causing damage. Energy beams were absorbed and redirected. Marcus flew through the storm of weapons like it was nothing more than rain. He landed his shuttle in the courtyard of the Imperial Palace. The building was enormous, covering several square miles. Its walls were made of the same heat-resistant stone as the Temple of Flames on Vorth. Guards immediately surrounded him, their weapons pointed at his heart. I am here to speak with the Emperor, Marcus announced calmly. The guards did not respond. They simply opened fire. Marcus walked forward through the energy beams. Each one that hit him was absorbed by the flames that surrounded him. He did not attack the guards. He did not hurt them. He simply walked past them as if they were not there. More soldiers came. Tanks rolled toward him. Aircraft descended from the sky. The entire military force of the Velthari Empire concentrated on stopping one human walking toward the palace. It did not matter. Marcus walked through walls of fire, through explosions, through everything they threw at him. The flames protected him with a loyalty that seemed almost loving. and with each step, more Velthari soldiers stopped fighting and simply stared. They had never seen anything like this. No one had. He reached the doors of the palace and pushed them open with his hands. Inside, the hallways were empty. Everyone had fled or hidden. Marcus followed his instincts, moving deeper and deeper into the building. The fire inside him guided him, showing him where to go. Finally, he reached the throne room. Emperor Velthar XVII sat on his throne, surrounded by his personal guards. He was larger than any Velthari Marcus had seen before, his scales polished to a mirror shine. His eyes were not black like most of his species. They were gold, a sign of royal blood. "So you are the human," the Emperor said, his voice booming through the chamber. "The one who has destroyed my empire." "I have not destroyed your empire," Marcus replied. "Your empire destroyed itself through cruelty and arrogance. I am just the consequence." The Emperor laughed. It was a cold, empty sound. "Consequences! You speak as if the universe has rules. As if there is some cosmic justice that punishes the wicked. There is no such thing. There is only power, and those who have it take what they want. Then why are you afraid of me?" The question hit the Emperor like a physical blow. His golden eyes widened, and for a moment his composure cracked. "I am not afraid of you." "Yes, you are. That is why you built the Genesis device. That is why you are willing to kill billions of innocent people rather than admit defeat. You are terrified of what I represent." "And what is that?" Marcus stepped forward, and the flames around him grew brighter. "I represent the truth that power without wisdom is meaningless. I represent the fact that some forces in this universe cannot be conquered or controlled. I represent fire itself. And fire does not bow to emperors." The Emperor stood up from his throne. He was massive, towering over Marcus by several feet, but despite his size, there was fear in his eyes. "If I activate the Genesis device, you will die along with everyone else." "Maybe," Marcus admitted, "but you will not activate it. Because deep down, you do not want to die. You want to live. You want to rule. And you are hoping that somehow you can still win." For a long moment, nothing happened. The Emperor and the human stared at each other across the throne room. The guards held their weapons ready, waiting for orders. Then the Emperor did something no one expected. He sat back down on his throne. "What do you want, human?" "End the war. Free the slaves. Join the rest of the galaxy as equals, not masters. Do these things, and your people will survive. Your culture will continue. Your empire will become something better." "And if I refuse?" Marcus raised his hand, and a small flame appeared above his palm. It danced and flickered, casting shadows across the throne room. "Then I will let the fire decide, and I think you know what it will choose." The Emperor was silent for a very long time. Then, slowly, he raised his own hand and deactivated the Genesis device. The guards around him lowered their weapons. "You have won, human. But I want you to know that I do not surrender, because I am afraid of death. I surrender because I am curious." "Curious about what?" The Emperor's golden eyes studied Marcus with something like respect. "Curious about what kind of galaxy you will build. Curious to see if your vision of equality and justice is possible. And curious about what fire will teach us now that it has found its voice." Marcus nodded slowly. The flames around him began to fade, returning to the warmth inside his chest. The war was over. The hard work of peace was about to begin. 3 months later, Marcus stood on a balcony overlooking the new capital of the Galactic Alliance. Below him, beings from hundreds of species walked together through streets that had once been closed to anyone without Velthari blood. The universe was changing, slowly but surely. Kira joined him on the balcony. You look thoughtful. I am thinking about fire, Marcus admitted. About what it means to carry this responsibility. You did not choose it. No, but it chose me. And now I have to decide what to do with it. Kira placed her hand on his shoulder. You already know what to do. You teach. You share. You help others understand that fire is not just destruction. It is creation. It is warmth. It is life. Marcus smiled at her. Somewhere in his chest, the eternal flame burned steady and content. It had waited billions of years to find a species that truly understood it. And now that it had found humanity, it would never let go. Because fire and humans belonged together. They always had. And together, they would light the darkness of the universe, one star at a time.